Gaming NBS episode 126. Dragons. Hate that when I do that. This is Gaming NBS Tabletop RPG Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Sean.
And I'm Brett. I don't know what Sean just did, but he hates it when he does that. Welcome to the show.
I don't think you can hear it, Brett, because so what happens is I have the chat room open and I have to mute it before it kicks in.
Oh, otherwise you get the echo in the head?
Correct.
Oh, that's lovely.
So yeah. Anyways.
We have also learned throughout different experiments with the chat room that Sean can watch a chat room, but Brett cannot.
Yeah, Brad gets too distracted. He wouldn't be Brett. Like he would be sitting there like
I'd be like tickety tick tickety tick tick. What are you doing, Brett? Got a show going? Nope, in the chat room. That's what I'm doing. We had a topic? The fuck, man.
Well, yeah, man. Hey, so I just want to we'll start off with announcements.
Yes.
This is a kind of an interesting one.
Yeah, I have. Well, so you lead off. And
all right. So we want to thank Joe. Joe, your last name came in a little bit garbled in the voicemail, but I know it's Joe, for pointing this out to us, but even more so Brett, because apparently
I have a copy of this book. And when Sean's like, listen to this voicemail, I'm like, motherfucker, I run over, grab a copy. Holy crap, there it is.
So apparently, we want to thank Joseph Goodman at Goodman Games and anybody associated with the fourth printing of Dungeon Crawl Classics, because apparently they were nice enough to put a link to our show on page 445 under podcasts. So, if you haven't delved into a DCC, book, they do kind of the inspiration appendix N-ish piece in the back of their book. And apparently our episode on DCC, I think with Jen Brinkman's in there listed as a link. So thank you so much, whoever suggested that. Yeah.
No, it's really cool. I was just shocked. I'm like, son of a bitch, we're in a book. That's really neat. I had no idea. I even have the damn thing. Didn't even notice it.
Yeah. So let's get into random encounter, shall we? Or do we have anything else? You don't have anything, do you, Brett?
No, nothing I can think. Oh, just heads up, Sean, you are still coming to GaryCon, correct?
Yeah, I'll be at GaryCon, man.
Okay, so just want to make sure. Should changes. Sean and Brett will be at GaryCon. I know other folks, listeners of the show, will be there, and hopefully we will catch folks there. They'll shake hands, kiss some babies, and drink some beer together. So, and of course, game. So, off we go. That's all I got, man. Moving on.
Random encounter. Emails, voicemails. Now, I'm going to start this, Brett.
Okay.
I have to apologize to Angela. She's like, hey, did you ever get that email that I sent in about Pure Mongrel? And I said, oh, yeah, I'm pretty sure we reread that. Yeah, absolutely. And then I'm going through. And so the way I kind of workflow things is as people email us and I put it in the show notes, I archive the email. So check, that's done. Well, apparently there's Angela sitting there and I'm like, oh God, I missed it.
You didn't accidentally archive Angela. You just accidentally didn't put her thing in.
Right. I didn't put it in the show.
All right.
So this is kind of like, I think so. Pure Mongrel, it was a friend of the show, patron of the show, wrote in talking about issues with him just being the game master and nobody else.
GM burnout.
Nobody else in his group is going to game master. And Angela, right after that show, wrote in. And then, of course, we failed to talk about it. So I'll let you read it. Go ahead.
And that's how we lost Angela as a listener.
She's in the chat room, so she's giving us a second chance.
Okay, good. Whew. Thank God. All right, Angela, first off, this is Brett, and I want you to know it's not my fault. Sean just it's Sean's fault.
Hey, there's another reason for a train. It's the one that Brett throws Sean under all the time.
Where necessary. Anyway, Angela Murray, hey guys, I missed Pure Mongrel's post on G Plus when it was first posted, but I do have some thoughts on his predicament. I would never become GM if one of the guys in my group hadn't persistently asked me, quote, so when are you going to run something, unquote. All the GMs I've ever played with before treated the job as something only the most talented and knowledgeable people could ever take on. Running a game was a job for people who were, quote unquote, better than I was. This friend, though, wouldn't take that for an answer. Why not? That's stupid. Of course you can run a game. There was no babying or coddling, but he was adamant that I could run a game. So eventually I tried it and found I wasn't all that bad at it. Now, over 10 years later, he tells me that many of my games are some of his favorites. So my advice to Mongrel is to mentor his players to become GMs. You can usually tell which player would make a good GM. They're the ones that come up with the great ideas that further the game and draw other players even further into the game. Start working with that player to find the game they're interested in running. Give them honest feedback when they do run, pointing out the good stuff along with the stuff that needs to be improved. It might be a rough start at first, but everyone has to start somewhere. Hope Mongrel can find a player or two of his to pick up the baton and run a game or two for the group. Ange. You know what, Angela? That is a damn good idea. I ended up running games for my high school gaming group because Eric, the usual DM, couldn't make it. Everyone was bemoaning the fact that no one would do it. Or without Eric, we can't have a game. I'm like, well, I know how to run this. I can do that. I think I've told this story before. They were fucking brutal. It was just, they were mean. And I damn near gave it up at that time. But anyway, I like Ange's approach and her friend's approach much better, saying, hey, I think you could do this once you give it a shot. And her thought of the post-game support, honest feedback. I mean, you could even take that a step further, right? You could say, hey, I'll look over your notes for you. I could point out some stuff. I'll play NPCs. There's lots of stuff you could do in that vein. I hadn't even thought about that, Ange, but that's a really good point. I mean, Mongrel, if you can, and anybody else out there, if you've got a player in your group who you think would be a good game master, there's no reason not to grab she or he and see if that person is willing to step up and grab onto it for a little bit, even just to try it and just to find if that's not their thing.
Like Mikey.
Yeah.
Mikey.
He likes it.
He likes it. Hey, Mikey, try it.
And anyone who doesn't know what that is older than Sean, is younger than Sean and Brett. All right. Next one is for you, sir.
All right. Christopher Gray emails us. Hey, BS Arenos. There's a new one. I wrote a while. Go ahead. What, Brett? Huh?
No, I was going to say, I don't think we've been called a BS Reno, but I'll take it.
That's right. I wrote a while back about how I drank some bourbon and accidentally signed up to run a Let's Kill Strahd one shot and then revealed that I was in a panic and didn't know what the hell I was thinking.
I remember that. Oh, you poor bastard, Christopher. Anyway, carry on.
So I took your advice. Well, okay. Were you sober when you took our advice?
All that matters is he took the advice and then wackiness ensued. Carry on.
Right. So I took your advice and structured it so the players were at the right level and had the right stuff to do it, and then unleashed them into Castle Ravenloft. I have since tested the scenario a couple times on Roll20 and finally feel like I'm ready to bring it to Strategicon in a couple weeks. All right.
That's awesome.
Whew.
That is very cool.
Reason I'm writing this is because I have to recount the hilarious result of my last playtest session. First, let me explain that I pulled out all the stops. I had the maps laid out in Roll20. I had spooky audio, rain, lightning effects, organ music, the whole thing. I was doing voices, pulling voice acting out from those acting classes in college. I set the tone, and the players were in it. It was great, but wait till you hear what happened. Can't wait. So my structure was this. The moment the players set foot in the castle, I count down 10 rooms/scenes. On the 10th room/scene, or 2 hours of play, whatever comes first, Strahd shows up. I've found 2 hours is a good amount of time to fight Strahd. So anyway, Strahd shows up as they are in a small corridor. You can tell the party is freaking out. They weren't expecting him.
I would not expect Strahd in a small corridor either. That would be, bring me my brown pants.
It had been adequately built up. My strategy was to lure them out of the corridor and then go to someplace nice and dramatic for the showdown. So Strahd taunted them a bit and then, for effect, turned into a bat to lure them off. One of the characters tried and it succeeded to catch the bat.
Squeak.
Okay, so my DMness steps in. I adjudicate. I determine that the bat is a tiny creature. The character has gripped him, and so therefore he is restrained. I'm thinking, no problem, man. I mean, he's Strahd. He can't get out of he can get out of this. Embarrassing, but whatever. I fail the strength check on the grapple, so Strahd remains restrained. Then they use the holy symbol of Ravenkind, which sears the bat for 20 damage around. Now he's restrained and a bat. He can't cast magic. The sunlight is preventing him from resisting damage. The sunlight is stopping him from shape-shifting. He can't bite, strike, or literally do anything until he breaks free of the grip of this character. Failed roll after roll. And as a result, they basically cooked the bat under a daylight heat lamp until he died. Sounds like fried bat to me.
That's funny.
It was quite possibly the most anticlimactic BBG scene I've ever witnessed. I think I horribly failed running Strahd, though after the session, the players stayed and chatted. We all went over the rules, and we can't see how I could have done anything differently. In the end, it was hilarious, memorable, and awesome. And as one player said, this will be a story I'll tell until the day I die. I was going to wait until after the con to recount my one-shot experience with Strahd, but this was too juicy. I'm sure the con will go differently. I won't use the bat form for starters. Thanks, guys. Love the cast. Keep up the good work.
So this reminds me of two stories. One is a Vampire the Masquerade story. There's a bad guy in there, Vlad Dracula. Yes, the Dracula. And at one point, I had him show up, and he's haranguing some of my player characters. And the one guy's a Nosferatu, who has this swarm of bats under his control. Nosferatu, these nasty, ugly vampires that live in the sewers. And as Dracula is haranguing him and berating him and thus and such and so on, he has this swarm of bats show up. They grab Vlad and start flying off with him just to like get him out of where he belongs. I was so personally shocked as game master. I didn't know what to do. So I decided, you know what? Every once in a while, the bad guy just gets flustered and doesn't quite know what to do. It wasn't like life or death quite like this, but it was pretty memorable. Some of the guys in my group still tell that story. The other one is when I was playing Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil. There's a nasty vampire in there, spoiler. And my buddy Lenny is running it. And we're at his place. And we get in the position where the vampire is attacking us. And he goes, well, hang on, guys. I got to go upstairs and put the kids to bed. I'll be right back. We've been at Lenny's before. We know approximately how long it takes him to put the kids to bed. As soon as he leaves, he shuts the door. We grab Alpha, rules lawyer. How do we do this? What do we have to do? We inventory every spell we have, every magic item we have. It was rock to mud, daylight. That we basically, within the first 3 rounds, had trapped the bat. We had trapped the vampire in this space where he couldn't get out. And because he wasn't able to get back to where he needed to reform, he died. And it was like, bam, 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 done. And Lenny's looking at us like, what? No, that's not true. He spent the next half hour trying to figure out how he could get out of it, but he loved to play exactly by the books. There was nothing he could do about it. It was crazy. So at this point, whenever Lenny's running, he never, ever leaves to go put the kids to bed. When there's a big bad guy in the room, he just realized that's a bad idea. But this, my friend, this is Mr. Gray. This is fucking funny. I love everything about that. I love it.
Go ahead, man.
Would you have let them do that, Sean, in your game?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's what, 2 hours in. I guess you gotta kind of. I don't know, man. I'd have to look at Strahd's stuff and see. I mean, apparently he did what he could.
That's funny,
and I guess that. How in the hell are you gonna guess that some stupid player character is gonna freaking capture you in bat form?
And then you can't get out, regardless of how strong you are. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No kidding. Like,
oh, Lordy. All righty. Next up, we've got the Mongrel. Saturday Pondering. He posted up on G+. There's plenty of advice out there for new players. There's plenty of advice out there for new players learning a new game. What about getting an experienced player to learn a new game? Can experienced players come with too many preconceived ideas to give a new game a fair go, especially if the new game is vastly different in mechanics or concept? What happened? What advice? Good God, I can't speak or read. What advice would you give beyond keep an open mind on how an experienced player, including game master, should approach learning a new system? Sean?
You gotta, first of all, they gotta want to, regardless. I mean, they have to be, you gotta convince them if they don't want to. And then you gotta appeal to, if they have some reluctance, then you gotta appeal to what appeals to them. So if they're always gravitizing to a particular character concept, then you may want to pitch them that they can play the same type of character in the new game. But if they don't want to play because it's too much out of their wheelhouse or comfort level or whatever the reason is, I don't know if you're going to be able to. I mean, and I mean, it's kind of like forcing a square peg into a round hole. I don't know.
One of the things that I found has worked is when the rest of the group is really into the game, right? So I played D&D with Sean, and they wanted to all play Star Wars. I'm like, fuck, I hate Star Wars.
Well, yeah, if you get 4 out of like 5 players,
yeah, and then you get into it, and to be a good player, part of it is like get into the game. Everybody else is into it, and all the other players are looking at Brett saying, "Hey, what does Tornos do?" I'm like, okay, yeah, you know what? I should get into this. This is a cool story. Shit's happening. New mechanics, new dice, funky system, shapes and colors, and not what I expect normally. But let's get into it. The other thing I thought Sean did really well for me in that game was when really cool stuff happened, he heavily utilized the what's super sexy about this game system. Hey, it works there in this case, so that's why I'm saying it. So the cool thing about that game system was how do you interact between game master and player with the talk about the Star Wars Edge of the Empire stuff to determine what the dice mean, what happens. By making that happen, then I just gravitated naturally towards it because I like that stuff. That was a lot of fun. So I think that's another component is that if the player again likes to be fighter person, give that person an opportunity to use all the cool fighter stuff that you gave them. So if they have a character sheet and it says bash monster in face, and you don't give them a chance to bash monster in face, they're going to be bored. Give them a chance to spotlight and succeed, right? So if you try to play a new sport and you just suck ass at it, you're not going to do it again. You try to play basketball the first time, you can't dribble. You feel like a fool. In the role-playing game, though, you can actually take it and you can cook the books, if you will, and you can trick the player into thinking they've totally succeeded or whatever, but you can give that person opportunity to shine in the new system, and they're going to like that. I mean, it's hard not to. At least that's been my experience. What do you think? Will you agree with that, Sean, or what do you think?
No, I agree.
Okay.
I do agree more with if you got a group of 4 people or 4 players and 3 are on board, 2, maybe one's in the middle and 2 are on board, you can usually convince the other 1 or 2 to give it a shot. I mean, tell them it's not going to be forever, man.
Yeah, that's a very good point too. Like, hey, we're going to play this a couple times. We'll see what we like. I've got a 1-shot campaign, or I've got about 3-4 sessions, and we'll be done. I'll move on to something else if we want to. And the other piece that comes with that too is when I have done that, when I ran Lamentations of the Flame Princess, and the first time I ran DCC for my group, as soon as I was done with it, I said, "So, what'd you think? Honestly, tell me." I think it was clunky in a few spots. I gave them a few things they could, chew on as far as mistakes that Brett made, or that we made system wise or whatever. But talk to them in kind of broad brush strokes. Hey, it was new for everybody. What did you guys think? Were any parts of it fun? And had them talk about the fun stuff first, and then we tore apart the little pieces that were bad. And everybody has something fun to talk about. I mean, unless they're a complete and absolute ass who just lump on the log, does nothing. But that's a different problem.
Yeah, and chances are you're probably not playing with that person.
Probably not.
Hopefully. Or you're putting size 10.5 up their bootah.
All right.
Hey, we don't condone violence.
No, not.
We understand it.
Well, we understand it. We just don't condone it. Not allowed anyway. Reach me in private message. Anyway.
Sean Azriel Arosha calling BS on our social encounters episode. Aloha, friends. I must call BS on episode 123. Read 1, 2, 3. Its premise was social encounters, but there wasn't talk of a single encounter. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I can't. What do I say, Sean? He's got us there. I mean, when you're dead to rights, you're against the wall, the lights are on you. He's got us.
One thing I could do to fix that is just change the title of the episode.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed the discussion on skill checks in it about players being more socially adept than their PC and how to address it, which could also be an episode onto itself. How to represent the skill differences between PCs and players. True.
Very true.
But this episode did not address how to create engaging social encounters, their importance to the narrative, and its place in an adventure. I was really looking forward to this because I have no idea on how to do them. Hell, I can't do shit, but these are my favorite type of encounters because some players don't even realize they are in one.
Yeah, it's a good point. I've seen players like that, yeah.
In one of my games, there were some goblins we were supposed to fight, a combat encounter, but a lawful good PC ventured forth innocently and said, "Hello, friends. Do you mind if we go by you?" Roll 1d20 plus charisma and won them over, turning it into a social encounter. This has been a bit too long already, but I do want to let you guys know, you guys keep rocking, but I have to call BS on you because that's what friends do. Take care. Maybe I'll hit you with a Spanish project of my own soon. Not unlike Mr. Hobbs's Hobbs. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Koi sort of hint. Cheers and hugs, Azrael.
Well, Azrael, if you do get a podcast going in Spanish, whatever, we have plenty of different listeners. I would love to pimp the Sean. I'll be happy to.
Oh, absolutely, man.
So say, I'll tell you what, though, what you say here, Azrael, Sean and I have been chatting about this, but a couple different things that we would like to do from an episode perspective and turning things around a little bit. I shouldn't say turn things around a little bit, but focus on some components of it. So Sean, I think we're going to have to revisit this one and talk about the creation or types of social encounters. We can do this. We can put a finer point upon it using Azrael's kind words to us. What do you think?
Yeah, there's somebody else that's hinting that they have some BS with that episode too. Maybe, hey, maybe not one of our finer episodes. All right. Okay.
Yeah. Geez,
man.
Off my back, man.
What is that? Like 2 out of 125? I mean,
never any good. I mean, that's not bad. Wait, what? Wait. Oh, I went the wrong way. Shit. No, that's a good point.
Next on Gaming and BS.
We're sorry. And here's why.
No longer taking feedback. Just kidding. We need that. That's cool. It's all cool. That's why we put it in there, man. We're not above reproach.
No. And this is very good. Both Sean and I, after we got done with it, we talked about it. And I said, I don't think we spent enough time on the, how do you make an encounter thing? And Sean looked at me and said, no, we didn't touch that at all, you dumbass. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Now, let's be fair. I didn't call you a dumbass, Brett.
No, not directly, but I felt it in my heart.
Well, Oh, I suppose that's it for random encounter.
That's it. Let's endeavor to do better next time, Azrael. I promise you, sir, we will revisit that.
Yeah, and thanks for writing in, everybody.
Oh, absolutely. I say this all the time, and I do definitely mean it. As I know Sean does as well. The feedback we get from folks like Azrael, the stories about Strahd getting grappled and burned alive, Ange and Mongrel's feedback, all that stuff is really good. We've had a number of great listeners give us some incredibly good stuff that not only just spawns good next episodes and show topics, but gives Sean and I stuff to learn and to think about too. So that's cool. We want it to be a community like this. So it's really, really cool. Thank you.
I think there's some people that just listen to this show just to hear that segment, and then they're like, click.
That's quite possible. That's what I do.
Right.
That's why the main topic is kind of lackluster sometimes. Sean and I are done after the feedback, like whatever.
Hey, we really do a 20-minute podcast. The rest is kind of like whatever.
Yeah, we phone it in after this. So if you want to hit snooze, if you want to turn us off, now's about the time.
All right. Oh, that's not the freaking main topic. What?
Dragons.
I already spoiled dragons.
Yes.
I'm gonna speak like Cumberbatch the rest of the episode. Dragons. You are little man.
So, Sean and I were kibitzing about different angles and tacks and kind of a series of different topics for the show this year. One of the things that we have batted back and forth a couple of different times is kind of monsters and different ones that we like or we think get short shrift in games, whether they be sci-fi games, fantasy, modern, blah, blah, blah. And the first one that came to my mind were dragons and the problems with them, the how I've made them interesting, different things that kind of not only the problems that may be inherent with the dragon itself, but let's just get into it. Let's just see what we can do here, Sean. So, you with me, man?
I think so, man.
Okay. So, they're
named after a popular role playing game.
They're named after a popular role playing game. Yes, that's what that is. All right.
I'll be in town all week.
So one of the things you have anytime you've got, let me see. So let's see. One of the biggest problems that I have run into in my gaming career with dragons themselves is that when you first start playing Dungeons and Dragons or any other game with dragons in it, you're like, oh, fucking dragon. Oh, wow, this is just a dragon. However, they, in my experience, become quickly outclassed by a host of other monsters in the various different books. Demons and Devils, the Tarrasque, and if you really want to get some kick-ass Tarrasque stuff, I'll just throw another bone towards the Misdirected Mark guys. But the Book of the Tarrasque by John Arcadian, that book still, I've read it twice now. It just totally kicks ass. Anyhow, there was you
can follow Joe the Tarrasque on Twitter.
Yeah, Joe the Tarrasque went after me too, little
Joe the Tarrasque.
Yeah, he went after me too, little fucker. Anyway, there was even I have the Dragon Mag article. I think it's issue 50, I think. But there was an old dragon article about true dragons, basically trying to breathe life back into them as like real foes for a campaign. The original dragons that in your basic D&D or AD&D and so forth were they weren't as modular, if you will. I mean, you had adults and youngs and so forth. But anyway, some of these other foes that you run into, demons, devils, lich, a number of other things that kind of outclass them or they outpace them as like the main bad guy of a dungeon. And perhaps that's because many of the old hands who were running adventures or dungeons and so forth, there was always a dragon at the end and you wanted something different to spice it up. Instead of a dragon being the threat to the city, you wanted a horrible undead abomination, or it was some evil sorcerer summoning a devil or something along those lines. Sean, have you found that to be true? Have you found dragons are like outclassed in your games, or at least you don't see them as like the monster?
I've run into more devils and demons than I have dragons.
Yeah,
I play Dungeons and Demons and Devils. That's the game I play. I can't even remember the last time I ran into a dragon, dude. Seriously.
I think as a player, I can't recall. As a game master, I remember the last one I used, and I used it a little bit differently. I'll talk about it later, but I very rarely use them in the standard trophy model because it's just worn or dead to me. I don't know. But yeah, there's a lot more devils than demons, and perhaps that's because some of those creatures, I mean, the Trask is like awful, holy fucking hell, how do you even kill this thing? Bucket of unstoppable evil, or destructive force, I should say, not necessarily evil. It's like a crazy thing unto itself. But devils and demons have that whole corruption angle where they're poisoning the minds of people and destroying things from within, that kind of a slow decay rot approach, versus a dragon, which shows up and just stomps the living shit out of the entire city, So I think when I think about dragons, one of the first thing that hits me is kind of some of the inherent problems, at least that I see with them, is I think what you're saying is perhaps what I'm saying as well right now, is that as a player, I don't fear a dragon as much as I do other monsters or other things. Is that true for you?
Because the game master isn't putting a big hammer on your ass.
That's quite possible.
I do believe, well, with devils, now we're getting into devils and demons, man.
I know. But that's okay. We're just using it as something to bounce us off of here.
I do think that there's other extra planar, based aberrations, whatever. The thing is that when dragons came out, their armor class was tough. They had breath weapon.
Yep.
Magic.
Flight.
So that's kind of known, I think, for the most part, or it becomes known relatively quickly. Right? I mean, you walk into a dragon's lair and you're like, holy shit, those are the things that first hit your head.
It's the boring factor, right? If they're too well known.
That may be. And then you get into devils and demons, it's like, oh shit, oh, cold iron, oh, what can they do? Possession, what else do I need to, like, I don't, I'm not equipped to kill this thing. Oh, they got spell resistance. I think dragons do too, to some degree.
Some, yeah.
But yeah, devils and demons are a whole nother ball game, I think.
The other thing, just from a natural perspective of dragons too, is you have an apex of apex predators in a dragon. We talk extraplanar beings or outer planar beings. They don't live here, and when they show up, it's like, hey, you get rid of them. Whoo, thank God they're gone. But a dragon that lives in some place, you're like, fuck, this is huge ancient red dragon that lives in the Stardock Mountains. Okay, probably when that dragon, old Bernie is active, Bernie goes on a rage and Bernie's the fuck out of everything and eats everything.
Burninaid in the countryside.
Yeah, Trogdor is the whole shit out of it, right?
Right.
So when you deal with that was one of the problems I had at one point with the Forgotten Realms is I remember reading through dragon magazines and they were like the dragons of the realms. You couldn't sling a dead cat without hitting a dragon in the realms is what it seemed like. And I'm like, how can you possibly have that many apex of apex predators around? But I think sometimes having a natural creature of that size and that's destructive power, the Trask has built into it. Like, look, it only shows up every once in a while. It only does this, once every 50 years when the comet is in the sky. That type of monster is designed to only happen every once in a great while. Yes, a dragon can fall asleep for a number of years or centuries or whatever, but it's still, it doesn't have the same. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to have the same feeling to me. And I think the biggest piece for me is that unless I do something different with them, they're boring as fucking hell because every player knows it. My kids know dragons. I mean, like, oh yeah, dragons fly. They have breath weapons, lots of different kinds of breath weapons, different colors equal different kinds. And if you change it, oh, it's different. It shoots rainbows or it shoots whatever. It's not really, doesn't seem to have the impact that some of the other creatures do.
Dude, you gotta hammer down the fear.
You got. How would you do that? How would you do that, Sean?
First edition AD&D, man. Roll versus fear, right? Wasn't there a save? Roll versus fear.
Oh yeah, there's fear and all that. Dragon fear was a huge thing. Dragonlance really amped that up.
Yeah, man. You read so Dragonlance, in my opinion, is the game, the campaign setting of dragons. I mean, come on, it's got it in its name. Christ.
I was gonna say it says Dragonlance in the fucking title. Better be a dragon or two.
So I mean, for those that are not familiar with Dragonlance and Kryn and the campaign setting, it's a great set. I think it's a great setting. Unfortunately, though, if you read all the books, you kind of like, well, I know all the setting and I know everything. But anyways, but the fear factor, man, you got to bring, I mean, even just in the earlier books, like the Chronicles books, when they run into the first dragon that they haven't seen him in hundreds of years, thousands of years, maybe hundreds, but it was a black dragon.
In darkness came, I believe. Yes.
Yes. Black dragon came out of the well, darkness everywhere. Nobody could see anything. They heard the screeching of the dragon's call coming down upon them. Of course, it's breath weapon for a black dragon's acid. Splatter that everywhere. I mean, those guys in the book were scared shitless, man.
I tell you what, I think this is a really good opportunity for those mechanics to really work in your favor as a game master. Because this is a piece we've talked about this a little bit with horror games in the past. At least I don't know if we've done necessarily on the mics, but I know we have outside of it. When it's not always easy to scare a player, right? And one of the ways to get past the player being scared is to remind them via game mechanic, hey, you just failed that fear check, and that huge ancient white drake is coming off the glacier. Your character is scared shitless. Both are the brave. The barbarian of barbarians is now just shitting his loincloth because this thing is roaring down on him from the tundra. Oh my God. Use those mechanics to really kind of ratchet that up, as you're saying. I think that's a key piece, is that you can't the other component with it too is that when you talk about how smart they are, or when in certain games, I know D&D was famous for this, and even the Middle Earth setting and so forth, these things are incredibly intelligent. Smog was very smart. Cunning,
Yeah,
talking, quizzing, trying to figure things out.
Yeah, if you get a grand, what is it? What is the largest one? Wormling? I can't remember. Because they had different
I don't know.
sizes, right? They had
Yes.
Wormling, they had mature, like young adult.
But even if you take what would be a young adult dragon and say, okay, it's only 150 years old. Wow, it's a really really smart thing. It's super cunning. It's very intelligent. It's wicked. It knows how to use its surroundings. All that stuff that's very everybody. Yes, okay, it's a green dragon in his home territory. Oh, in the dragon's lair, it's very dangerous. You have to make that shit real, though. You have to make it so that there are obnoxious traps. You really have to play that stuff up. And the other piece I have found is that I do have to periodically, when I have brought them out in the past, is remind the players that their characters don't know shit. Right. The first time they encounter one, what do you know? Well, we know this. No, Sean, no, Brett. You guys know this, says Ange. Your characters don't know that about dragons. You've heard this rumor, and this rumor. What would your characters do with that knowledge? It's a really good, I think anyway, for as a game master, it's a good opportunity to remind the players that, perhaps to play a little more to character. If you want to get some of that mystery back, Sean, that you've talked about, wanting to have some of the, oh my God, I didn't understand what this thing would do. First off, as game master, don't say it's a red dragon. It lives in the mountains near a volcano. Don't play to all of those very specific things. Change the rumors. What color is it? Says player. Well, it's kind of this golden brown, but kind of glitters silver in the moonlight. What? What golden brown glitters silver in the moonlight? Yes, that's what it's described as from the different peasants. Take a page from the Dungeon Crawl Classics books, folks, and use vague descriptions by farmers and peasants and people who only saw a glimpse of this thing, or who were so terror struck that they're in shock after this beast came down and laid waste to half their battalion or whatever it is. Use those vagaries, and that helps to ramp up the terror and the fear. And again, the mechanics are always there at the end.
But here, I think here's here's what I think the quickest, fastest way to strike fear into a player character's group or player character. Either you have an NPC high level and you know that they are really, they got a lot of hit points, or you just come out, and this is going to sound a little railroady, but if that dragon or that even any creature comes out and hits them one time for a massive amount of damage, that will scare the piss out of a player character.
Yeah, when your fighter with 150 points.
Let me see. Yeah, you take 75 points of damage. One hit, one time. And that's not like, oh, it gets 3 attacks per round. Oh, let me throw in the breath weapon. You take like an NPC, put them out there for fodder, like they're, Mr. Mrs. Warrior, 20th level, 10th level, whatever. They've been fighting since the dawn of time, and they've conquered lands and whatever. And they get out there, and the dragon, they think they're going to take them on like the Nazgul in freaking Return of the King. And they smash that guy into 100 pieces. That'll put in some fear, man.
Yeah, shock and awe, right?
Boom! Holy shit!
You take the cavalier on his big weight charger and destroy the horse and cripple the cavalier. There you go.
Oh, and your freaking lance is like broken like a freaking toothpick.
Yeah. The other piece that I have found, apart from that particular type of shock and awe, one of the issues I have with that is some games have a tendency to make the dragons oversized, like so fucking gigantic big. In the Iron Kingdom setting, which I really liked by Privateer Press, there was Lord Torduk, which is like a dragon god. And the one picture in the Monsternomicon shows him and people sitting next to him, like in silhouette. And the people are damn near the size of ants compared to him. He's so goddamn gigantic. Dragons are fucking huge. That has a lot of fear. People will be terrified of something like that because there is how the hell could you fight something that's that big, right? I mean, if you have something that you feel is like a living battleship attacking your player characters and you're just human sized, it's terrifying. What the hell are you going to do with that? And I think if you go too crazy in the oversized component, it becomes comical. And the players look at you like, well, I can't beat it. There's nothing you could do. I have this sword. Yes, it's a +5 Holy Avenger. How could I possibly, of cleaving heads of dragonness? And how could I possibly cleave this thing's head? Its head is on a neck that's 10 feet around. That doesn't even make sense. It's become so big and so crazy. You've almost jacked it to the point where it's so oversized as dumb.
Michael's in the chat room. He's like, the horse is now a fine red mist.
That's true.
But you got to get the Dragonlance, man. You got to get, Huma, and you got to get the saddle. And
what do you think, though, about
you got to get the silver arm and forge the new Dragonlance, man, and take them into battle and kick their ass.
So what do you think about oversized dragons? Is there such a thing to you? Do they get too big?
Man, everything in D&D or fantasy is always like big. Like, I mean, Christ, they did Storm King's Thunder, man. It's full of giants. Everything's like,
yeah, but a giant. No, I'm telling you though, a storm giant is what, 26 feet tall. So that's fucking big.
26 feet, man. Could you imagine taking on a 26-foot freaking being?
Okay, that's crazy enough. But then you
Brett,
think
I'm talking about you, man. Like you, Brett. I mean, Brett B, dude. You got like at least 100, 50 better odds than I do at taking him on.
But the dragon's even bigger.
That's craziness.
Yes, so that's what I'm saying is that I think there's a certain point with the size, especially of dragons, where it becomes comical. It's too much.
Gotta get the underbelly, dude. Remember in first edition, you had to get the soft spot. Backstab.
That's true. Oh, but okay.
That's how we used to play it. We used to play it where it would be like, okay, I'm gonna, you take on the dragon, you're backing it, you're bashing it away, blah blah blah. It's a group effort. Everybody's poking away at this thing. I used to remember a dungeon master would be like, and you find like the one vulnerability, the soft spot, there's scales that have been ripped apart and torn away. And, they may have some old scars that haven't recouped over, 150 years. You get in there and you hit that one spot, man. It's the Death Star, man. It's got the little
opening. It's Smog, right? He's got a hole over his left breast, just a small hole where the black arrow can hit him. The cool thing about that, though, is that when you have finally how to do this. So when you have something like that, the players then feel like, oh my God, we have a chance. And you feel that that's the only chance you have. And you limit the chances down to like these, what are at least overtly perceived as slim margins of success. We have to hit it in just the right place at just the right time. Otherwise it won't work. Okay. The players get their asses handed to them, tail slaps, wing buffets, breath weapons, spells, whatever the dragon's doing. And then somebody gets in that quote unquote lucky blow because they finally hit the soft spot. Big whoop and holler goes up. The party's happy as hell. They did a thing. Oh, we got to do it again. You got to do a couple of those because it's got a shit ton of hit points. That's the only way, in my opinion, that the oversized foe becomes fun is to add those narrative components to it. Because otherwise, when it's so big, it's too much, in my opinion.
I totally agree. It's a group effort and there's a lot of shit going on. You got a magic user that's dicking around, trying to bring down, counteract some spells. And obviously when they bring this thing down, they're going to be jumping for joy, man.
If you do it right.
Be like,
right. Well, the other piece that goes with that, though, is that it can't be the 15th dragon that the party's killed.
No.
That's the other component of it, which is where I got bummed out with the Forgotten Realms and some of, perhaps maybe this is why dragons don't show up as often as I may like to see them sometimes, but there's a limit. You can only have so many apex predators, for one. And two, if killing dragons at high level is the same as killing kobolds at low level, it gets really boring. Oh, yeah, I'll go kill another. Oh, it's just another pesky blue dragon out in the desert. I'll go take care of that. I mean, that it has to be special. And if you've made it fearful and they finally killed one, if they ever encounter another one, it has to have something different or equally terrifying. I think I have played games back in my high school days when you killed a dragon a week. It seemed like you're fighting dragons constantly. You're high enough level. The game master's throwing dragons at you. Like, yep, it's a large green dragon. We can take that out. You swoop in on your Pegasi and you take the dragon out of the sky.
The games I played do not age well. They would not.
No, they do not. No, they do not.
What the hell? We're a bunch of
Well, again,
knuckleheads.
exactly. Well, which is why we try to learn from that shit and make it better.
Right.
So one of the classic images of the dragon is like the St. George, the dragon. He's, and the dragon isn't that big. I think it's like smaller than a warhorse. The one classical painting where he's being stabbed. I took the concept of a very ancient dragon, but not very large in size, still big, but not as small as a horse, but again, not oversized. And I had a dragon as a founder of a monastic order. It was basically an evil order of monks, lawful evil. And what I had done in this AD&D game is I basically set the dragon up, and he was the founder of that monastic order, and that was what he used to kind of control and so forth, and that was his thing. I've also had dragons as crime lords in major cities, like they're somewhere deep within the bowels of the city, and I basically took a twist off of I can't remember the name of the Beholder under Waterdeep. That's a big crime lord in Waterdeep is a Beholder. I just thought, I'll have a dragon instead of a Beholder. And that works out pretty well, too. They're super smart. They essentially live forever. And they can amass a lot of gold really cheap. Just get a bunch of slaves and underlings to do stuff for them. Every once in a while, they have to crush or kill a few people just to shock and awe the locals. But otherwise, they're crime lords. And I'll tell you what, when the players come to find out that the crime lord who uses the symbol of the dragon is really a fucking dragon, that scares the shit out of people. When you come down, you get through the dungeon, the subterranean part of the setting, you get in there like, okay, the crime lord, this is his room, like, it's a goddamn dragon. The crime lord's a dragon. That, from a shock perspective, it's the, oh my God, I didn't know it was a thing. The dragon was hidden behind this facade of being something else. So the players didn't have time to remember everything that they already knew about dragons. So I got past the whole dragons are so well known and understood, the players knew how to combat it. There was just shock. The players had no clue that it was there. So again, perhaps sneaky is the answer for that one. But that was a hoot for me because I had it set up and there was plenty of clues and hints that it was some sort of nasty reptile that was behind everything. Honestly, one of the players thought it was like serpent men or a naga, but turned out again to be the dragon. So I had a good time with that. Have you done anything similar to that where you've kind of fucked around with dragons, twisted them a bit?
I have not messed around with a lot of dragons for a long time, and not quite sure why. I haven't run a game in a little while now. But also with dragons, one thing we haven't covered is some well, I wouldn't say mythology, but some like Dragonlance is an example where dragons would take human form.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I mean, your gold dragons, the good ones especially.
Right. But I mean, you get the Dragonborn, that's derived from heritage of dragons, but I have not whipped out a dragon as an encounter or an obstacle in a role-playing game for quite some time. And it kind of irks me because of the stupid name of the game. And I don't know how many people have really, like, it's dungeons and everything else, but not dragons. Nobody throws out the big worm.
There was a Old Dragon magazine. There's a short story about a guy who he comes into this alchemist shop and he's trying to sell some dragon's blood because he needs money. And it's this basically a cauldron, if you will, a small bucket, for lack of better term, of dragon's blood. And the alchemist is figuring out like, oh, it's red dragon's blood. Oh my God, this is really blah, blah, blah. And the character who's trying to sell it, as he gets paid, is wandering out. Stupid adventures coming in my home, kick me out of my own cave. Oh, just a fucking dragon selling his own blood so he can get some money back. And he steps outside the alchemy shop, turns into a dragon, flies away. And I read that, went, oh, that was kind of cool. It was a fun little short story. And I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have, we were playing second edition AD&D back in the day. And I had this world I had built. The alchemist shop, it was a dragon. It was this big red dragon, and he's not a very nice person, but that was how he kept tabs and everything that was going around him. He just polymorphed himself into this thing and would watch. The problem, I think, now is, well, with some of the polymorph spells, I think as they're written now, you can't do quite that size change difference. I don't know. But I know that was a thing, especially back in first ed, where dragons were constantly, especially the more powerful ones, the good ones would take different shapes, like the golds and the silvers, to interact with people just to kind of see what was going on. So that was fun when I had the red dragon who was an alchemist and he just hung out there and people would try, they would come looking for potions or healing, or they'd talk to stuff. He was very involved in city politics and all this. So adventurers would come up to try to figure out where the red dragon was up in the mountains. And he'd be like, oh, okay, it's you guys. Really? Okay. So when are you leaving? Okay, cool. That's good to know. He just make sure to ambush him on the way up to his own cave. So that was again the sneaky bastard thing I did, but it was a lot of fun. So yeah. I guess I still like dragons, but there's a piece of me that I guess perhaps it's to your point. I haven't used, the last one I used was as a crime lord. I did use one as a huge, just a oversized dragon, but it was frozen and sleeping high in these mountains, and the players accidentally woke it up, which and then it causes death and destruction. So they have to figure out a way to put it down. But I guess where I'm going is that each of those times when I used it, it was a pivotal piece of the campaign. It wasn't a throwaway creature. I remember looking at some of the Wandering Monster things where you could be going from here to there, and Green Dragon, Wandering Monster. And I always thought that if the dragon becomes a Wandering Monster, it sounds kind of like a throwaway critter, like Wandering Monsters. That freaked me out. I'm like, really, a green dragon, a huge ancient green dragon, is just a wandering monster through this forest. That could, first off, one, kill the whole party. Which okay, fine, it could happen. But two, I'm like, that seems a little, because as soon as the Wandering Monster Dragon came, the first time I ever used it, I thought, oh, this could be fun. The Wandering Monster and Green Dragon shows up in the forest. The players fight him, kill him, and then they try desperately to track him back to his cave because they want to find the dragon's loot. And try as you might to tell the players that, well, he could have flown hundreds of miles in any one direction. They're like, don't care. We're going to find the dragon's loot. You're on a quest for the king. Fuck the king. Where's the dragon's loot? I'm going to find the dragon's cave. They become very narrowly focused on that. And that's the other piece with dragons, is that the volume of treasure that they're supposed to have can be unbalancing in a way. If you do it like the old Smog the Golden thing, where you're sitting upon this huge, literally millions upon millions of gold coins, that's a lot. It can kind of change the entire economy of the world right there.
Yeah, it's obnoxious. Definitely.
So I like dragons. I think they need to, I think when I use them, I like to use them in different ways. Like I said, crime lords, founders of monastic orders. And I also like to, like I said, we're head of an alchemist shop. But if I'm going to do it, I tend to build it as a focal point for the campaign. So, Sean, when you last had a dragon in a game, do you even remember when that was, or how you did it?
I honestly cannot remember the last time I had a dragon. And it could have been the Dragonlance time frame when we were going through that as a campaign setting, would be my guess. But I don't even remember. Like, it had to have been before my break. And I had like a 15 year break.
Damn. So do you want a dragon in your next game? If I run D&D for you, do you want to fight a dragon?
I don't know. I'm not quite sure. I mean, I would probably welcome it. I don't know if I would want to fight them, or if it's the big bad, or maybe it's a distant land and something is.
Or try to social encounter my way out of it.
Maybe. You never know. But yeah, I do appreciate dragons. I always had a soft spot for Kryn and Dragonlance. But there are some drawbacks to having a dragon come around in the campaign. And, just the economics of a dragon existing is weird, right? Like, what do they eat? Like, they eat everything because they're so big and, so old. And unless they're hibernating and their metabolism is slow and they don't need to eat as much.
I'll tell you, there's very few things as fun as an unclimactic. I say fun as in, sarcasm here, but I do recall running a 3-0 dragon event, and it was a huge fucking anticlimax because the players had done all this homework, done all this prep work as characters, and they crushed the dragon like that. Just destroyed it. It was like a non-event. And it was really, the players were like, oh, wow, that was really cool. And it was forced on all sides because it was so anticlimactic. And if you fight something like a dragon, it's not a big goddamn deal. It was like, oh, yeah, we killed it. I killed goblins too. It just doesn't, it loses its potency. And I think so many times, and maybe this just hit me. Maybe when I have had that problem in the past, I pulled a dragon out too late. Dragon should have come out when they were 5th level, 6th level. Why did I wait till 10th or 12th level to do that?
Right. Well, and even if you do, I mean, I don't know, maybe you DCC it and they don't know the rules. They don't know the specs. You bring the hammer down with a reasonable touch. Maybe give them a fighting chance if they want to take the big bad on. I don't know.
The ambiguity for Dragon, I think, is key. Instead of having it be just another stat block that comes directly out of the monster manual, flipping it around a little bit, doing something. My examples of the Crime Lord or the Monastic Order guy, they're different. They're flipped, right? But just something that makes it different, even if the color is different or it's green but breathes fire. Just something that tweaks it a little bit makes the dragon interesting again. At least it does to me.
Hey,
that's what I want.
Let's make dragons interesting again.
That sounds like a horrible political slogan.
I'm gonna get a hat and put that on there. A red hat.
I want a red hat that says "Make dragons interesting again."
Yeah, and wear it around GaryCon.
Yeah, then we'll get mobbed and murdered.
Dude, I am so full of this stuff, man. I don't know why the hell I'm not selling this crap.
So, I mee seriously though, I would love to hear what other BSers out there have done with dragons. And we've got a lot of OSR listeners. We have a number of folks who are playing 5e and other games. I mean, Sean and I talked very heavily in the D&D space, but I know there's dragons in every fantasy game out there, right? If you're playing Savage Worlds, there's dragons. If you're playing Fate, whatever, you can have a dragon in Fate. Excuse me. There's all sorts of places and ways to go with them. We didn't even touch on dragons in a modern fantasy setting, like in Chicago or something along those lines. But I'm just, one of the things when I read about dragons in any monster manual, I tear through them. And even with the 5e one, I went, okay, what did they do to try to make them a little bit different? What did they do to make it new again to me? And that's one of the monsters in the 5e book went, okay, it's just a dragon again. Oh, it's just a dragon. There was nothing in there that really jumped out at me that said, oh, these 5e dragons, there's something to write home about. It just didn't sing to me at all. Where I actually thought, even 5e having winged kobolds was like, oh, that's a different thing for kobolds. That's cool. Maybe that was somewhere else I don't recall in 4e. But okay, that was cool. That was a neat little twist. Then I get to dragons, like, oh, it's just a big fucking lizard that breathes stuff. Okay, yay.
Says the guy that doesn't believe in game balance. Man, whip out if you don't believe in it, whip out the dragon first level, man.
Exactly. Bam. No, that's what I'm saying. When I have done it in the past, to change things up, yeah, fuck it. You could do it at any point. But again, when I read through the rules as written, they're like, oh, well, all right. So I got to fuck around with that thing. I got to do some work to it to make it do something for me. So
bring back.
I like to know what other people are doing.
Let's make dragons great again.
Exactly.
Let's get into die roll.
Let's do it before we get worse.
Die roll. Brett's got a couple. I got 3. We've got a few from listeners. Brett, go.
So in the interest of talking about dragons and so forth, I found a little article about some Aboriginal Australians, according to archaeologists, have lived with giant lizards, like the huge monitor lizards and other mega fauna, I guess. So link in the show notes, kind of cool stuff. And speaking of our friends at Goodman Games, there is a Kickstarter out there, how to write adventure modules that don't suck. I believe as of when this thing drops on February 7th, you'll have about 7 more days left. This sucker ends, I can't recall when. But anyhow, it's out there. The Kickstarter's out there. Link in the show notes. So take a look at it. Over to you, sir.
Chromatic dragon lairs on drive-through from Heroic Maps. So speaking of the theme of the show, check that out. There's a bundle there that you can grab if you want to start implementing dragons into your campaign. One thing we did not mention is dragons that are derived from the Asian side of the world.
Yeah, that's a good point too. I mean, I would love that. That's another way, the Panlung and the different Asian dragons, and they operate differently than your standards. Yeah. So that's yet another way to tweak them a little bit. Good stuff.
Number 2 for me, the perfect potion list from Goblin Punch blog. So if you want a reference for some potions, check out that link in the show notes. Number 3, sticking with the theme of the show because it's how I roll. 16 strangest dragons in Dungeons and Dragons. It's an article from IO9 in like 2015, but it points out some of the cooler yet maybe wackier versions of dragons.
Does it have the rainbow dragon and the purple dragon?
I didn't see the rainbow dragon, but it does have like the iron dragon.
Okay, I remember that one. There was one dragon in a dragon magazine that they mislisted the experience points, and someone wrote back to them and said, if that experience points total is correct, you'd have to kill Asmodeus 30 times or something like that in order to equal the experience points for one of these dragons. Like, I'll just go kill that dragon once and I'll be done with it. It was crazy.
Now, if you are a Dungeons and Dragons aficionado and have a lot of monster manuals, some of those dragons are going to ring a bell with you. And some of you that have not purchased all those, then you'll probably be like, what? They actually released that dragon? What? That's nuts. But anyways, check it out. Link in the show notes. Listeners started off, Brett.
Yeah, we got Brian Krutzinger pointed out an article on CBC Radio Canada, Why Dungeons and Dragons is a Source of Female Empowerment. Link in the show notes. I have not had a chance to look that one up yet, Brian, but thank you for calling it out. I want to take a look at that one.
It's an interesting one. I think it's more of it's an interview. I think it's an interview format. So it's an interview with between like CBC Radio and somebody else, which I believe is obviously female, but they go into kind of their why they love Dungeons and Dragons and what it does for them.
Very cool. And flipping from that to something rather disgusting, Hawk Sparrow and a couple other people had posted this, but Hawk was the first one I saw. It's a vile bit of insanity. Doctors apparently pulled a live cockroach out of a woman's skull. Why did I put this up here? 1, it's fucking gross as hell. 2, it reminds me distinctly of the Shan, these horrible insects from Shaggy that are in the Cthulhu mythos. So that's why I put it there. And it's great fun to do horrible things to player characters with insectoid parasites that climb up their nose and live in their brains. So, hey, there you go.
Goblin's Henchman has a collection on Google Plus, link in the show notes, dedicated to magic items. So he puts a few up there if you want to check them out, by all means.
Shane Freeman gave us a great resource on maps, Dave's Delver. Link in the show notes. Really
Dave's Mapper.
Dave's Mapper. I said Delver. What the hell I said Delver for? Mapper. davesmapper.com in the show notes, of course.
Yeah, so Dave's Mapper is interesting. If you go there, Brett, it brings in a bunch of maps from a bunch of different resources and kind of lays them over each other, and then you can uncheck them, and then it takes off each layer. It's just whack. I mean, it's cool as hell. Check it out.
Slick. Very nice.
And lastly, but not leastly, Bruce Connington. He wanted us to point this out. So the UK Games Expo, I think that he brought this to our attention last year. So if you're listening to this, February 7th, 2017 is when this drops. If you listen to it after this happens, not sure what to tell you, but the expo runs from the 2nd to the 4th of June, 2017 in Birmingham, UK. So Bruce and Lee Nielsen are once again running several Dungeon Crawl Classics games. They have the following programs so far. I'll put that in there. Last year, all the DCC sessions sold out within a few days. So if you are in the UK and you're looking to sign up for some cool games at the UK Expo, you got to get into Bruce's and Lee's games for sure.
Even if you haven't played DCC, you wanted to give it a shot. I mean, 13 Skulls, Escape from the Purple Planet, Dark Trails, they got a playtest going. Well, the Worm, it's all good stuff. So if you've not played it before, you want to see what it's all about, no better place than a convention or a game expo like this to get in, try out a new system like DCC for you. So good stuff.
Definitely good stuff. And speaking of games expos, if you are in Madison, Wisconsin area or the Wisconsin region, come November 2017, you will definitely want to make plans for Gamehole Con. That's gameholecon.com. They just sent out a newsletter recently. Brett, do you remember some of the highlights in that newsletter?
I do not, because I'm a bad person, Sean.
I know, me too. But I'm trying to think of what they put in there. Some new guests, I'm sure.
Larry Elmore is the artist. He's doing art for them. He will be here, which is really freaking cool. Larry's one of my favorite artist people, so that's really nice.
Yes. And if you're not getting the newsletter, go over there to the website, put your email address. Even if you're not signing up, maybe you come down the road and you want to keep in touch with. They did announce the new plushie for 2017, which is going to be
Mimic.
So they've done the owlbear, the boulet,
the land shark, yes, and now the mimic. Very nice.
By John Kovalik of Dork Tower and Munchkin fame.
Correct.
Those other things. Otherwise, we will be there. We hope you could be there as well. Thank you so much for Gamehole for being a partner. What are we talking about next week, Brett?
Well, I don't know. I've got a couple different things on the docket here. I think we might dive into the social encounters component, or we might talk about some fighting. So we'll see. It'll be one of those two, I'm pretty sure.
All right. Well, excellent. For Gaming MBS, I am one of your hosts, Sean.
And I'm Brett. Good night and good game and all.
This episode brought to you with the help from the following patrons. Christian Sexy Voice Serrano, Kevin Lovecraft, Joe Swick, Brett's Biggest Fan, Jeff Rodemacher, Forrest Gary, Mark Anthony Benedetti, Bruce Cunnington, Eric Jeppesen, Andy Hall, Sean Nicholson, Tim Jensen, Chris Steele, Knights of the Night Crew, Palladian, Jason Blagelock, Remy Bilodeau, Jason Hobbs, Mirko Froelich, Wayne, Lumrunner Humphrey, James Carpio, Not Caprio, Pure Mongrel, Lord Tentacle, Corey Johnston, Eric Tankar, Brandon Barnes, Mark Tasaka, Brett Pazinski, Tim Shorts, Eileen Barnes, Chad Knight, Dan LaValle, C.W. Mellencamp, Nicholas Abruzzo, Victor Wyatt, Tony the Butcher Baker, Craig Huber, Eli Kurtz, The Lost Sailor, Graham Miner, Todd McGowan, Roger Braslett, Misdirected Mark Productions, Old School DM, Jason, Christopher Gray, Tabletop Game Talk Podcast, Stephen Dragon Spawn. For the cost of a coffee shop coffee, you can support the show for an entire month. Consider visiting GamingMBS.com/Patreon. That's Patreon. Thank you to all the patrons, and thank you for listening.
This has been a Litterbox Studio production.